Hello friends, I'm Elsie from J1 studying in Kites Junior College, and today I'm here to explain you about demand, which is a part of the lesson in economics. Generally, demand is treated as a synonym for desire without considering its economic implications. The demand for a particular commodity or service plays a vital role in the determination of the prices of these goods and services. The two words demand and desire are used in similar sense, but there is a clear differentiation between demand and desire. In economics, demand is something greater than desire, and desire is just a part of demand, and every desire need not constitute demand. The concept of demand explains that the consumer is willing and able to purchase the commodity which he desires, and his desire should be backed up with his purchasing power. For example, if you see a beggar lying on the road and he's dreaming of boarding the plane and traveling around the world. So here you can notice that he's having that willingness and the desire to board the plane and travel around the world. But it is to be noticed that since he is a beggar, he cannot afford much to buy the ticket to board that plane. So here he is lacking that ability to purchase the commodity. So this cannot be considered as demand. And in the similar way, when a person is having the ability to purchase the commodity but lacking the desire or willingness, then also that cannot be considered as demand. So, for a particular thing to be termed as demand, it should constitute the three following things. That is, desire, willingness, and the ability to purchase the commodity. If it constitutes these three things, then only it can be considered as a demand. And now, I think you have got a real picture of what is demand. And next, coming on to the demand function. Demand function is a mathematical expression that shows the relation between the quantity demanded and the factors that determine it, and that can be expressed as d of x is equals to f of p of x, comma p of 1 till p of n, comma y, comma t, where d of x denotes the demand for good x, f shows the functional relationship, and p of x shows the price for good x, p of 1 till p of n shows the prices of the substitutes and complementaries, and y denotes the income of the consumer, and t represents the tastes and preferences of the consumer. So, a demand function can be explained in this way. Now friends, there are many factors that determine the demand for a particular commodity. And now, I'm going to discuss some important factors that determine the demand for a particular commodity. In that, the first one is the price of the commodity. Here, in price of the commodity, it says that the price and the quantity demanded for a commodity are inversely related. Here, if you find in these two graphs, we have taken the price on the y-axis and the quantity demanded on the x-axis. So, here when we find that when the price fell down from P to P1, we observe that the quantity demanded has increased from Q to Q1. So with the fall in price, there is an increase in the quantity demanded. And here, if we find when the price has increased from P to P1, we observe that the quantity demanded decreased from Q to Q1. So with an increase in price, there is a decrease in the quantity demanded. Hence, we can say that the quantity demanded for a commodity depends on its price, and more goods will be demanded at a low price and less goods will be demanded at a high price. And the second one is about the prices of substitutes and complementaries. Even the prices of the substitutes and complementaries have a great influence on the demand for certain commodities. In case of substitutes, the relation between the price and the quantity demanded is positive. Here, if you look into this graph, you can see that we have taken two examples, that is coffee and tea. And we have taken the price of coffee on y-axis and the quantity demanded of tea on x-axis. So, when we find that the price of coffee has increased from P to P1, we can observe that the quantity demanded of tea has increased from Q to Q1. In the similar way, when the price of coffee has again increased from P1 to P2, we can find that the quantity demanded of tea has again increased from Q1 to Q2. So with an increase in the price, there is an increase in the quantity demanded. So here exists a positive relationship between the price and the quantity demanded of the two substituted goods. And coming on to the case of complementaries, there exists a negative relation. So here, in case of complementaries, you can find that we have taken two examples, that is car and petrol, which are two complementary goods. Here, if we observe, we can see that the price of car is taken on y-axis and the quantity demanded of petrol is taken on x-axis. When the price of car fell from P to P1, we can find that the quantity demanded of petrol has increased from Q to Q1. And even further, when the price of car fell down from P1 to P2, we can find that the quantity demanded has again increased from Q1 to Q2. So, with a decrease in the price of the car, there is an increase in the quantity demanded for petrol. Here we can find a negative or an inverse relationship existing between these two complementary goods. This is because when there is a fall in price, there is an increase in the quantity demanded. And the third one is about the income of the consumer. In this income of the consumer, we have two cases. That is, an increase in the income of the consumer, and second case is about the decrease in the income of the consumer. So, when you find about the first case, that is increase in the income of the consumer, here we have two types of goods, namely normal goods or superior goods, and the second one is about the inferior goods. In this normal goods, in this case, if you find when the income of the consumer increased from Y to Y1, we can find that the quantity demanded also increased from Q to Q1. So we can we can see that when there is an increase in the income of the consumer, there is an increase in the quantity demanded in case of superior goods or normal goods. And when we see about this inferior goods, when there is an increase in the income of the consumer from Y1 to Y2, we can find there is a decrease in the quantity demanded from Q1 to Q2. So here we can see that in case of inferior goods, when the income of the consumer is increased, there is a decrease in the quantity demanded. So we have dealt and discussed about the increase in the income of the consumer. That is, when the consumer's income is increased, there is a decrease in the quantity demanded for inferior goods and increase in the quantity demanded for superior goods. And the second case is about the decrease in the income of the consumer. Here, in the decrease in the income of the consumer, here also we have two types of goods, namely superior goods or normal goods, and the second one is the inferior goods. Here if we find when the income of the consumer here is taken on y-axis and the quantity demanded is taken on x-axis. So here if you find when the income of the consumer has decreased from Y to Y1, we can find that in case of this normal goods, the quantity demanded has also decreased from Q to Q1. So with the decrease in the income of the consumer, there is a decrease in the quantity demanded for the normal goods. But in case of inferior goods, it's not the same case. Here you can find that when the income of the consumer has decreased from Y to Y1, we can find that there is an increase in the quantity demanded from Q to Q1 in case of inferior goods. So when the consumer's income has decreased in case of inferior goods, the quantity demanded has also increased. And we can say that in case of inferior goods, there exists a negative or an inverse relation, and in case of superior goods, there exists a positive relation. And the fourth one is about the tastes and preferences. Friends, you all know that the tastes and preferences of a consumer are dynamic in nature. They change from person to person and from time to time, and they never remain constant. So, with a change in the tastes of the preferences of the consumer, we can say that there is a change in demand for some particular commodity. Example, if you see that in olden days, there was a greater demand for dhotis, but now you can find exactly no. Now there is a greater demand for jeans and trousers. This is because there is just small change in the taste of the preferences of the consumers. They prefer to wear more fashionable and trendy dresses. So nowadays there is a greater demand for trousers than dhotis. And the fifth one is about the technical process. Friends, due to the increased technology and rapid changes in the technical fields, new discoveries have entered the market. As a result, the old goods are substituted with new ones. So due to this also, the demand for some particular commodities will be affected. Example, we can find button phones and Android phones. Now, there is a greater demand for Android phones over button phones just because of the increase in technology in these Android phones. So, we can say that due to the change in technological processes, there is an increase in the quantity demanded for the Android phones. And the next one is about population. Even the population of a country also affects the demand for a particular commodity. We can say that a change in the size of population will change in the demand for a particular commodity. Example, you take an economy producing thousands and thousands of walking sticks and thousands of chocolates. And in that country, if 70% of the population is filled with old people and when 30% of it is filled with small children, here we can say that there will be a greater demand for walking sticks over these chocolates. This is because I have told you that 70% of the population is filled with the old people. So they generally prefer walking sticks to take their support. So due to the change in population also, there will be a change in the quantity demanded for the commodities. And the next one is about the changes in the climatic conditions. Due to the change in weather also, there will be a greater change in the demand for some commodities. For example, if you take in winter, there will be a greater demand for sweaters, jerkins and woolen clothes. In summer, there will be a greater demand for cotton clothes. And in winter, there will be a greater demand for gumboots, raincoats and other umbrellas. So even with the change in the climatic condition, the demand for particular commodity is affected. And the last one is about the state of business. In state of business, here we can find that during prosperity, the demand for a commodity expands, and during depression, the demand for a commodity contracts. So this is all about the determinants of demand. And after learning the determinants of demand, I think you have come to know that how the demand for a particular commodity is getting affected. Now, discussing about demand, there are three types of demand, namely price demand, income demand and cross demand. The price demand states that it shows a relation between the price and the quantity demanded of the commodity, and it even explains that there exists an inverse or a negative relationship between the price and the quantity demanded for that commodity. Here, it even tells that the quantity demanded of a commodity depends on its price, and the price demand can be expressed as d of x is equals to f of p of x, where d of x shows the demand for good x, f shows the functional relationship, and p of x denotes the price of good x. So the price demand can be expressed in this way. And in price demand, we have demand schedule. So first of all, what is demand schedule? Demand schedule means the list of various quantities demanded at various prices in the market during a given period of time. And it is of two types, that is individual demand schedule and market demand schedule. First, learning about individual demand schedule. An individual demand schedule, it means that this is a list of various quantities of a commodity purchased by a single consumer at different prices in the market. And here this states that there exists a negative or an inverse relation between the price and the quantity demanded. Here, if you find in case of this individual demand schedule and have a look over this table, here we have taken the prices of apples and here we have taken the quantity demanded for this apples in units. So when the prices of the apples is falling down, we can see that there is an increase in the quantity demanded for this apples. So we can see here this is a graph related to this table and we have taken the price on y-axis and the quantity demanded on x-axis. So when the price of apples is falling, we can see there is an increase in the quantity demanded for this. So we can tell that in case of this individual demand schedule, there exists a negative or an inverse relationship between the price and quantity demanded as the quantity demanded increases with a decrease in price. And it is to be specially noted that this is the quantity demanded by a single consumer in the market during a given period of time. And the second one is about the market demand schedule. The market demand schedule means the list of quantities purchased by different consumers in the market at different prices during a given period of time. This means that this is the total demand for a particular commodity, and this can be better understood with the help of this table. Here, if you see, we have taken the prices of apples and the quantity demanded by 3 different consumers, and this is the total demand. And here if you observe, when the prices of apples are falling, the quantity demanded by the 3 different consumers are increasing, and this shows the total demand for apples. So here when you calculate the units purchased by 3 different consumers, it is the sum total, which is the total demand. So 4 plus 5 plus 6 is 15, and if you keep on calculating, this gives us the total demand. So with the decrease in price of apples, we can find that there is an increase in the quantity demanded for them. And here is a graph related to this table. Here, if you observe, we have taken the price on y-axis and the quantity demanded on x-axis. Here, assume that this is the total quantity demanded for the apples by the 3 different consumers. Here, when the prices of the apples are falling, we can find that the total demand for them is increasing. So, when the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases. Here also, we can find that there exists a negative or an inverse relation between the price and the quantity demanded. And here, it is to be noticed that it is the quantity demanded by different consumers at different prices in the market. Means, this is the total demand by different consumers and not by a single consumer, and this is to be kept in mind in case of market demand schedule. This is all about what is demand schedule, what are its 2 types. And now coming on to the law of demand. The law of demand, as explained by Alfred Marshall, defines that the amount demanded increases with the fall in price and diminishes with the rise in price when other things remain constant. And this law explains that the quantity demanded for a commodity depends on its price, and low goods will be demanded at high price and high goods will be demanded at low price. So when a particular thing has got its advantages, there will be disadvantages too, right? So in this case also, we have some exceptions to the law of demand. Generally, what this law of demand states is that low goods will be demanded at high prices and high goods will be demanded at low prices. But there are certain situations where less goods will be demanded at less prices and more goods will be demanded at more prices. So in this case, we have an exceptional demand curve sloping upwards from left to right, as in this case. Here if you find, we have taken the price on y-axis and the quantity demanded on x-axis. So when the price rose from P to P1, we can find that the quantity demanded has also increased from Q to Q1. So with an increase in price, there is an increase in quantity demanded. Here in this case, the demand curve is sloping upwards from left to right, and here this is named as an exceptional demand curve. Now coming on to these exceptions, in that the first one is Griffin's paradox. Sir Robert Griffin observed that poor people will demand more of inferior goods when their prices rise, and he even observed that the poor people, that is the workers in England, demanded more of bread. Means they bought more of bread whose price increased by substituting it with meat whose price was constant, and he noticed that they spent a higher portion of their income on this bread by substituting it with meat, and such types of goods are called Griffin's goods. So here, with an increase in price, there is an increase in the quantity demanded also. So this is contrary to the law of demand. And the second case is the Veblen's effect. Veblen said that rich people demand more of prestigious goods like jewelry, gold, silver, diamond, platinum, etc. And they demand this for social prestige. When the prices of such goods fall, even the poor people will start buying them. And these goods will no more have a special prestigious status. So the rich people will also stop buying them. So a decrease in price is not accompanied by an increase in quantity demanded. And here, this is contrary to the law of demand. And the third one is speculative effect. When the price of commodity increases, the consumer will buy more of it even if its price is expected to rise still further. So an increase in price is here accompanied by an increase in demand. So this is contrary to the law of demand. Here, to explain you this in a better way, let me give you an example. During cyclones, the government wants us to buy all the vegetable, grocery items and the important things what we require before and because we don't know what will be the situations after the cyclone. So we hurriedly rush to the market and buy all the vegetables irrespective of their prices. Even if their prices are expected to rise within the next 5 minutes, we still buy them, fearing that we may lack them in future. So this is an example projecting the speculative effect. When there is an increase in price, there is even an increase in the quantity demanded. So this is contrary to the law of demand. And the last exception is illusion. Sometimes consumers develop a false idea that less price goods are of less quantity and high price goods are of high quantity. So when the prices of such goods fall, they develop a false idea that the quality of this good is deteriorated, so that is why its price fell down, and they stop buying them. So even this is contrary to the law of demand, because when the price of good falls down, there should be an increase in the quantity demanded as per the law of demand. But here in this case, this is not happening. So all these are the exceptions of the law of demand. And now, generally, when we have talked about the law of demand, we have discussed that more goods will be demanded at a less price and less goods will be demanded at more price. In such cases, the demand curve slopes downward or it has a negative slope. Here we have seen that price is taken on y-axis and quantity demanded on x-axis. So when the price has increased, we can see that the quantity has increased from Q to Q1. So here we have an exceptional demand curve, here we have a demand curve which is sloping downward or which has a negative slope. So there are some reasons for it. Now let us know about these reasons. In that, the first one is old and new buyers. When the price of a good falls, the real income of the old consumer increases, and consequently the demand for the commodity also increases. In the similar way, the new buyers who were unable to buy before will be now able to buy after a fall in its price. As a result, the demand curve slopes downwards or it has a negative slope. And the second one is substitution effect. When the prices of goods fall, they become relatively cheaper and they get substituted with other goods. For example, if you take 10 rupees fruity and 65 rupees thumbs up, people will demand more of 10 rupees fruity because of its less price. So as a result, the demand for fruity will increase and the demand for thumbs up will decrease. So due to this also, the demand curve slopes downward. And the third one is the income effect. As discussed, we know that the real income of a consumer increases with the fall in price of the commodity. And this increased part of the income is again spent on the same commodity. And as a result, the demand for the commodity increases and the demand curve slopes downwards. The fourth one is about the law of diminishing marginal utility. This law explains that when a consumer increases the consumption of one particular commodity, the additional benefit which he derives from that additional unit will gradually decrease. But it is to be remembered that the consumer will always prefer to pay less amount than the additional benefit which he gets than that additional units, because the additional benefit what he gets from them keeps on declining, right? So due to this also, the demand curve slopes downwards. And the last one is about the multiple uses of a commodity. There are some commodities which can be used in wide ways, like coal, milk, and electricity. If the prices of these goods fall, they can be used for a variety number of uses rather than those which are restricted to one particular use. So due to this also, the demand curve has a negative slope. So these are the reasons why a demand curve has a negative slope or it slopes downward. And next, coming on to the changes in demand. Generally, the demand for a commodity changes due to a change in its price of the commodity, changes in the price of substitutes and complementaries, changes in the taste, preferences, and income of the consumers. And in this changes in demand, we have two, that is extension and contraction, and increase and decrease. First one is about the extension and contraction. So according to the law of demand, we know that more goods will be demanded at less price and less goods will be demanded at more price. So when the quantity demanded increases with a decrease in price, then that is called demand extension. And when the quantity demanded decreases with an increase in price, then that is called demand contraction. Here, if you find in this graph, we have taken the price on y-axis and quantity demanded on x-axis. So here, if you find when the price has decreased from P to P1, we can find that there is an increase in the quantity demanded from Q to Q1. So with the decrease in price, there is an increase in quantity demanded, and hence it is known as extension. Here, if you see from R to D, here it is termed as extension. This is because the quantity demanded has increased due to a fall in its price. On the other hand, you can find when the price of the good has increased from P to P2, you can find that there is a decrease in the quantity demanded from Q to Q2. And here, from D to R is termed as contraction. This is because there is a decrease in the quantity demanded due to an increase in price. So there will be an extension and contraction of demand if there is a change in the prices of the commodity when other things remain constant. And now the second one is about the increase and decrease in the demand for commodity. Generally, the demand of the commodity may increase and decrease when the other things like the tastes and preferences, the income of the consumer change, the prices and the substitutes and complementaries may change except for the price of the commodity. So in such cases, when the demand increases or decreases, this is called an increase and decrease of demand. For example, if an income of the consumer is increased, then the demand for a particular commodity may also increase. And suppose if the income of the consumers decrease, then the demand for a particular commodity may decrease. And it is to be noticed that when the demand increases, it moves to the right of the original demand curve, and when the demand for a commodity decreases, it moves to the left of the original demand curve. Here you can find that there are three demand curves followed by the original demand curve. So here we have taken the price on y-axis, quantity demanded on x-axis. So here there is an increase in demand. So here the demand moves to the right of the original demand curve, and when the demand decreases, it moves to the left of the original demand curve. And these increase and decrease in demand may take place due to other reasons as explained earlier, like the taste and preferences of the consumer, changes in the prices of substitutes and complementaries, except for the change in price. So when the demand increases or decreases due to the change in other determinants of demand except for the price of the commodity, that is termed as an increase and decrease in demand. So that is all about the changes in demand. And here till now we have completed what is price demand, and now coming to the second type of demand, which is the income demand. The income demand shows the relation between the income of the consumer and the quantity demanded for a particular commodity, and that can be explained as d of x is equals to f of y, where d of x denotes the demand for good x, f shows the functional relationship, and y denotes the income of the consumer. And here, as explained earlier in determinants of demand, we have come across that there will be certain changes for the demand of inferior goods and the demand for superior goods, with an increase and decrease in the income of the consumer. So why that changes take place are to be known in this income demand. So first, when you look at this table, here we have taken the income of the consumer, and here the demand for the normal goods, and here the demand for inferior goods. So when the income of the consumer is increasing, we can find that the demand for normal goods is increasing, and there is a drastic fall for the quantity demanded of inferior goods. So why these changes takes place? There is a reason for it. Let me explain you with the help of an example. Think that your father's income is 50,000 per month, and your birthday is round the corner. So you ask your father, "Father, please lend me some 10,000 rupees so that I may celebrate it with my friends by distributing dairy milk silks." So 10,000, it is not an issue to your father because he earns much, right? So he gives that 10,000 and you enjoy your birthday party. Think that your birthday is round the corner and your father's income per month is 5,000 rupees, and you asked him 10,000 to celebrate your birthday. Will he give you? No, he will not give you. Instead, he will say that celebrate it in a small way by giving 5 rupees 5-star chocolates to your friends. So here he has shifted to somewhat an inferior good. So when his price has decreased, he's not moving to that dairy milk silks. Instead, he's moving to that 5 rupees 5-star chocolates. So this explains the reason behind these changes. When your father's income is more, he is spending income on that superior goods. So the demand for the superior goods will increase when your father's income has increased, and in case of inferior goods, the quantity demanded will decrease. So when your father's income is decreased, here he will move towards the inferior goods, so their quantity demanded will increase, and in case of superior goods, the quantity demanded will decrease. Here if you see, that is normal goods, when your father's income is taken on the y-axis and the quantity demanded is taken on x-axis. When your father's income has increased from y to y1, we can see that there is an increase in the quantity demanded from q to q1. And when your father's income has decreased from y to y1, we can see that the quantity demanded has also decreased from q to q1. So with a decrease in the income of your father, there is a decrease in the quantity demanded. And in case of normal goods, we can say that there exists a positive relationship. Now coming on to that inferior goods. In case of inferior goods, here also you can find that the income in both the cases is taken on y-axis and the quantity demanded on x-axis. Here if you find when your father's income has increased from y to y1, we can see that in case of inferior goods, the quantity demanded has decreased from q to q1. But when your father's income has decreased from y to y1, we can see that the quantity demanded for these inferior goods has increased from q to q1. And in case of this inferior goods, we can say that there exists a negative or a inverse relationship. Hence, we can come to a conclusion that when your father's income or the income of a consumer is increased, there will be a decrease in quantity demanded for the inferior goods and increase in the quantity demanded for superior goods. But when your father's income is decreased, there will be an increase in demand for the inferior goods and decrease in the demand for superior goods. So this is all about the income demand. Now coming on to the last type of demand, that is the cross demand. The cross demand shows the relationship between any two goods which are either substitutes or complementary to each other, and this can be expressed as d of x is equals to f of p of y, where d of x denotes the demand for good x, f shows a functional relationship, and p of y shows the price of good y. And in this case, we have two different types of goods, that is substitutes and complementaries. Now let us learn about substitutes first. As discussed earlier in determinants of demand, I have told you that the substitutes share a positive relationship between the price and quantity demanded. So what is the reason for that? Here, if you look in this table, we have taken the price and the demand for coffee and the price and demand for tea. Here, when the price of coffee fell from 5 to 4, we can see that there is an increase in demand. But here you can find that though the price of tea is constant, there is a decrease in demand for tea. So what is the reason for this? See friends, as per the law of demand, when the price of a commodity falls, the quantity demanded for it increases. So the people who used to buy coffee and waste 5 rupees for this now will be shifting to this, to drink coffee to save 1 rupee. So with a decrease in price, the quantity demanded for this increased. And ultimately we can say that when there is a decrease in price of coffee, there will be an decrease in the quantity demanded for tea. So this explains the reason for that. And here, if you take the graph of this related to this one, the price of coffee is taken here and the price of and the quantity demanded for tea is taken here. When the price of coffee has increased from Y to Y1, Y1 to Y2. We can see that the quantity demanded has also increased from Q to Q1 and from Q1 to Q2. So with an increase in the price of coffee, there is even an increase in the quantity demanded for tea. So in case of substitutes, we can tell that there exists a positive relationship. Now coming on to the case of complementaries. In case of complementaries, we have discussed that there exists a negative or an inverse relationship. Now we are going to know the reason for that. Here if you look into this table, we have taken the price and the demand for car and the price and demand for petrol. Here if you see, when the price of car has decreased, the quantity demanded for petrol has increased as per the law of demand. And here if you see, the price of petrol is constant, but there is an increase in the quantity demanded for this. So why does this take place? Friends, generally if you think with common sense, why do we need petrol? We need to run our vehicles, right? But in this example, if you take, we need petrol to run our cars. So when the cars are increasing, then there should be also an increase in the quantity demanded for petrol, right, to run these cars. So ultimately, when the prices of the cars decrease, there will be an increase in the quantity demanded for petrol. So a decrease in price of the car will result in the increase for the quantity demanded. Here if you see, when the price of the car has decreased from P to P1 and P1 to P2, you can find that the quantity demanded for petrol has increased from Q to Q1 and from Q1 to Q2. So with a decrease in price, there is an increase in quantity demanded. So here exists an inverse or a negative relationship. And now we have completed about the cross demand also. Friends, we have come to know in this video what is demand and what are its three types. So that is the end of this topic.